Thank you to our speaker, Mr. Philip Varilia. Very interesting insights, given that we talked about, he delved into a little bit about some of the complexities working through the Philippines, whether you're a local investor, a foreign investor, operator, and how to navigate through government policies. And taking a look at the way that the evolving landscape of technology has happened over the last few years, the advent of these new government policies is designed to help streamline and make it easier doing business in the Philippines, harnessing that capability to become very much a digital transformative hub. And of course, with that being complex, we look into the next round, also something as complex that needs to be broken down, which is navigating cybersecurity in the cloud era. So I'm going to welcome up the next panel to the stage, who will focus on talking about cloud security, data sovereignty, and regulatory frameworks specific to the Philippines. So we have our first speaker, Mr. Jojo Nufable, VP and Group CISO of St. Luke's Medical Center. Second speaker is Marlon Sarongon, CISO at Maybank, Philippines. Next speaker is Mel Magrino, President, Philippines CIO Association, Regional Director and Philippines Country Head of Gogoluk. And our moderator, Fritz Gerald Enriquez, Principal of Cybersecurity Technology Consulting at KPMG, Philippines.
Thank you for having me here and having the privilege to moderate this discussion with my fellow esteemed speakers here. Thank you for introducing them. Let's proceed on this discussion. So maybe let's proceed with this one, which is one of my favorite topics in cloud. There's this, my personal favorite as misconception about cloud security. Cloud security is that security is a sole responsibility of the cloud provider, which we know, and in practice, in reality, that security is a shared responsibility between the cloud provider.
Thanks, Fritz. Before anything else, I would like to thank W.Media, the event organizer, for having us, and thank you again. I'm really glad to participate on this session. I think there's a misconception, not really a misconception, but there's an assumption that cloud infrastructure is more vulnerable compared to on-prem. But somehow, no, in the past, that principles that we used to adopt has changed. And in fact, most of the cloud providers invest heavily in security. So there are a lot of, I would call it as native security tools, or let's say features that is already in place in cloud providers. You just have to select which among them, or which among its features would suit your requirements. So there are really a lot, no? Even AWS continues to invest in several security features, and even they provide different threat of intelligence and cloud infrastructure, which somehow comparable to on-prem products. It's no longer a misconception, but I think what what client will do is assess what capabilities and what requirements that would really fit, let's say, infrastructure, applications, or systems would adapt, no, in terms of supports, in terms of capacity, and in terms of their risk appetite. So there are a lot of things that you have to consider before you adopt cloud. So it's no longer a misconception, but it would really start from planning and what's the best security tools that you have to put in place to make sure that your cloud is running free and, running securely.
Yeah. I'm Jojo Nufable. I'm from the healthcare industry. Meaning I've been to almost all the top hospitals like TMC, Metro Pacific Health, and St. Luke's. Yeah. The common misconceptions really is that the way the analogy I see it is that cloud security is more of the infrastructure, and the on-premise is more on the full. So it's a shared responsibility actually, and the way you partake that one, meaning the house is the cloud, and the content or the application should be handled by the by the by the client. It's as simple as that. So that's simple analogy for me.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Okay, I'm representing Philippines CIO Association as well as Goguluk, which is a global trust tech company. So I guess let me just give a perspective on how I wanted to answer the question. So I guess taking off if from the lens of an SME, right, from a small medium enterprise. And also like what I've seen in our partners, because all of the things that we do, like our solutions are practically all lodged in the cloud. So one thing that I actually observe, which is I got mad and a joke, but one is like the moment that you migrated actually to the cloud, so that's practically it, right? So it's more of like there would be, there would be a group of people who will take care of your infrastructure, right? How you actually operate it, maintenance, and how you also secure it. But technically speaking, if you migrate to the cloud, and also like if you would consider the SaaS solutions, the security component in most cases is missing. So I think we need to veer away from the notion that you have migrated to the. So I'm speaking about the generic cloud adoption. So it's more of like the moment that you migrated to the cloud, we as the end user, right, or we as the customer, we also need to do our part. Like for example, you also need to like negotiate and implement. So what are your rules, right? So your rules could be like very technology related, as well as what are the cybersecurity controls that you need to put into. And then you also need to do a lot of your risk assessment and also due diligence. So basically, it's not like the moment that you have migrated there, the responsibility from your end actually decreases a lot. It's not. Remember, when you migrate to the cloud, your CSP, from a data privacy perspective, becomes your PIP, personal information processor, right? And you, as the customer, you are the PIC. You are the personal information controller. So I guess that also boils down to what my co-panelist mentioned here a while ago, as well as you, Fritz, that it is a shared responsibility. You wanted to reap off the benefits in terms of faster, faster scale performance, but you also need to actually do your part, especially if you are into running, let's say, if you are into AI, and you are, so let's say like us, all of our systems are practically AI powered. So we do handle massive amount of data, right? So in doing that, we wanted to leverage on the cloud for better performance. But there is also like, cybersecurity and data privacy regulations that we need to make sure that the cloud service provider would have. So practically that's it.
Thank you, Mel. And Mel, I know that you came from as well from an organization before going to your current organization. Like Jojo and Marlon, they are leading the cybersecurity for both organizations. So maybe X number of years ago, maybe can you share your experience? What were the birth pains on migrating to cloud from a security standpoint? What were the birth pains from migrating to cloud? And of course, what were the advantages from the security standpoint when the organization migrated to cloud? Jojo?
It's a different ball game when you transfer from basically an on-premise. We are still on the process of migrating to the cloud. We are still majority. My organization, St. Luke's, majority still on-premise, even our hospital information systems. But we are embarking on a 5-year plan to transform, so meaning migrating to the cloud. And there's a lot of intricacy about this because we're trying to ready even our personnel because we for the longest time we have been in on-premise. It's a different ball game. We controlled our own security through our data centers. It's done on redundancy, but once you ship to the cloud, as with my panelists and even with you, it would be a shared responsibility, and we would be taking care of our applications, content, and the criticality of having a PHI, personal protected health information, and PII with a hospital or healthcare industry is a tantamount to, that's our advocacy, take care of our information system. So it's double the burden for us. So we were doing it regularly, and you make sure that all the policies, the guidelines, actually at the moment we are doing all those policy just to make sure that once we transfer to the cloud, everything is in place, people, process, technology, and everything. So it's a bit challenge actually. And coupled with that, I'm in charge also of implementing a cybersecurity posture or hardening of the posture, because once we know that once we go to the cloud, the attack surface will be exponentially expanded also. So there's a transition state, there's a future state, and now we are at the present state. So we are treating that way, the way we strategize.
I think one of the challenges that we encountered is managing the access. Because practically, all of our core platforms are lodged in AWS. And then there are like development teams spread all over the world. And then so practically it's like what happened is like our business grew, and yes, so all of our tech stack are there, but the thing is we find it like difficult. Let's say if we wanted to implement, like for example, ZT, let's say zero trust, right? So one of the core principles, if you wanted to implement that, is you need to have a robust IAM framework. So that would entail your policies, not just the policy that we know traditionally, like the ones like in Excel, or let's say somewhere listed in your Confluence, etc. It's not that, but it's a technical policy implemented, right? So how we dealt about that is to we actually implemented user groups. So I guess for us, it's a learning. I mean, we've seen our business growing and growing across the globe, but I think it's quite late in the ball game that we opted to say, oh, why didn't we do that in the first place? When in fact we have very good ties with our CSP. So I think it's really more about, I think one of our panelists here mentioned about planning earlier. So well, I guess the good thing about it is, well, yeah, so right now we've finished, putting in place proper access controls across. So it's not only access control of individuals, but access control of other core platforms and all of our, online DBs who would have access to other products and services of our company. Yeah.
I have a follow-up question on that, but let me park that first. Marlon?
Well, Fritz, to be honest, I am so lucky I'm not the one leading that initiative. Our CRO is the one who presented the business case to the board. And if I recall, my contribution is when I was about to ask that question, before we actually face the board, we have already a pre-discussion with my CIO. So I always make sure whatever risk, that potential risk that could introduce by adopting cloud is transparent and everyone is aware. I always attend our risk management committee, IT steering committee, so somehow they discuss about this. Maybank is not really into cloud, but there are a few small-scale infrastructure and systems that we are now going into it, and the business case is that there must be a benefit, the interoperability, and we should be able to assess our readiness. Because sometimes cloud infrastructure is not for all. So there must be proper risk assessment and a good strategy. Start with small scale, then later on, if you tend to see na, yeah, it's ready, you know, there are few systems that cannot really migrated to cloud due to its complexity. So make sure that this preparation and strategy are better laid out, and everything which involved, even the proper planning and readiness of the people, because not all people are ready, lack of skills and the I mean, before you go to battle, you have the guns and the bullets, right? So I think that's a strategy that we did when we start to adopt cloud. Yeah.
Thank you. And Marlon was able to list down, mention about some of the key considerations before a company goes to the cloud. One is planning is very important, risk assessment is imperative. And Mel a while ago mentioned about, so developers are across the globe, it's very, access control is very important for them. The identity governance of this the developers are important. Mel, let me go back to my follow-up question a while ago. So apart from this in identity governance, any other key considerations for companies to consider when they're migrating to cloud, where they want to expand in cloud?
GDPR. So like in our case, so just to share with you, so we have bought a company, a tech company based in The Hague. Hindi naman po ito kapitbahay ng ICC. Okay. All right. So we did 100% buyout. Why did we do that? Because we wanted to enter America and Europe market. That's the reason why. But it actually also created some sort of a nightmare for us. So I don't know why my big boss, I don't know if they even thought about it. What happened? I guess you know how and what are the criteria, right? Like how you get to comply or what warrants you to comply to GDPR. You're doing a business there, you are actually processing personal information, or it could be you are also a recipient, right, of a personal information, or you could be processing, storing, anything within the data life cycle, right, that touches, you know, a European citizen at some point, then you are bound to comply. So that is actually what happened to us. Because initially, we tried to comply with each data privacy law. We tried to comply with the data privacy law in Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Brazil, and then we expanded our business, and then there goes GDPR. So I guess what seemed to be pretty lucky for us, so when I joined Gogolook, I tried to lift it off and then patterned it with the PDPA Singapore. PDPA of Singapore. Although it's not really like a one-on-one, especially if you speak about data residency, data localization, right? So because there are specific guidelines that GDPR would actually require to you as the PIC and you as the PIP as well. So we needed to elevate like how we manage as well as tweak our framework in terms of data privacy governance in our organization to cater what would be the requirements of GDPR. And that said, we also need to, actually we underwent a full-blown privacy assessment because our HQ is certified for PIMS, Privacy Information Management System. But the company that we bought in Netherlands, they're not yet. So there are a lot of adoption in terms of policies and as well as really like putting in a plan how phase by phase they need to adopt it and then level up. Thank you.
We're fortunate to have Mel here since Mel is operating in other geographies apart from Philippines. I have follow-up questions on that, Mel, but I'll go to Jojo and Marlon on other key considerations for migrating to cloud. And of course, since Mel touched a while ago about data sovereignty and other laws that revolve around cloud security, Jojo.
Yeah. Yeah, for the healthcare industry, we follow CPAA usually. Then that's our main and DOH, data privacy and everything, because we are handling couples or millions of PHI. So the primary consideration of going to the cloud is to level up our operational excellence, because at the moment you could do only so much with a on-premise. We have a challenge even with our typical hospital operation system, EMR. It's very difficult to operate actually, because it's not our core competence to be handling data centers for that matter, and we have some data centers, couple of data centers just to make a redundancy, but it's a bit problematic handling it medyo, and the way we were looking at it, and we are on the middle of digital transformation. So when you're talking of digital transformation, it's synonymous of going to the cloud or going to the mobile. But the worrying lang is that a hospital or a healthcare industry, I think that's the least too matured in terms of knowledge of cybersecurity, even cyber resiliency and the stuff. So it's a bit challenge. So just making sure that although it's not a pass, right, it's a journey for us. Meaning it's about 3 to 5 years wherein we are just making sure that we do it the proper way. Meaning the cybersecurity posture is there. So all our development should be at least secured by design. And because although they're saying that when you go from on-premise to the cloud, we are migrating the system. It's different. You're not migrating when you change your systems. You're doing a brand new system, because the system that works on the on-premise, the usual, it will not work on the cloud. So we're doing it that way. Very. It's a journey. It's meticulous, but we're trying it to be. But St. Luke's, as the top hospitals in the Philippines and even in Southeast Asia, we are bound to do it. We are bound to do it, and we are bound to do it the right way.
Thank you, Jojo. And Marlon, anything to add on the planning, risk assessment, and of course as well the applicable laws in the Philippines for cloud security?
Well, banking is highly regulated by BSP. So first, we considered compliance and regulators. Of course, we always consult them in case we want to adopt something that is not aligned with the guidelines. So we consult BSP. Another thing is we manage risk effectively. That's one of the requirements for to set up a banking system. You need to have a robust management framework. See, we always anchored our cloud security framework to our enterprise risk management, so that all our key risk indicators align in how we manage our risk. And definitely, the most important thing is when you follow a certain guidelines, there are sets of principles there that in case you have a very critical information you have to put in the cloud, there are sets of rules and policies you need to comply. So it's one of the first things that we did in Maybank is we come up and draft a cloud security framework. We also came up with a cloud risk assessment and also a data governance sign-off checklist. So you have to classify which assets you need to put in the cloud and which among your systems are allowed to be migrated in cloud. So these are not definitely easy, because the heavily reliance on cloud as well could put your operations sometimes at risk, because you don't know when your internet is down or continue to operate, then interoperability and resiliency also is one of the utmost importance you have to consider. if you're managing clients' money or your customers' money, make sure it is always available when they need it. So it's somehow a driver for us to comply. So whether you put your systems in cloud, whether you put your system on-prem, the same security will apply. Yeah.
Thank you, Marlon. Thank you for mentioning about data governance. So most of the organizations that I work with, whenever they are migrating to cloud, undergoing digital transformation, data governance is becoming an imperative. Before, it's just IT governance, and data is just a component of that. But now, there's a specific team just doing data governance. Mel, so a while ago you mentioned about what's happening outside the Philippines. What do you think, what will happen in the Philippines, specifically in the area of the regulations that currently being imposed in other countries, and probably in short term, Philippines will also adapt that?
Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, December 19, 2024, the National Privacy Commission already issued a circular on data processing systems that leverages on AI, right? And then of course, as we know, if you are into AI, of course you will be dealing with models, right? And if you want a pretty good model, so you also need to have a good data. And your data could be a combination of your, let's go back to the basics of AI, supervised and unsupervised data, right? So I think there would be I would say a good, okay, so don't quote me that I said bad. I think there would be a good interference with regard to data privacy that's happening like in the other regions being adopted by the Philippines. There could also be a push as well, since we will be collecting, we will be processing, practically managing local data. So it could also be a push for data localization. Why? Because I'm pretty sure you have heard, so I think this a news, not last year, I guess even last year, that our big data center providers, right, they have expanded their operations, right? So that practically like help address the eventual need for data localization. And then also if you've heard about the APEC CBPR. Okay, the APEC CBPR also released their provisions with regard to what would be your responsibilities if you are PIP in the perspective of data privacy. So I believe Philippines is vying in that post to be part of the APEC CBPR. So if we are, then the more that it creates more of like a strong trigger, right, to the National Privacy Commission, Commission, or potentially the new set, it could be, we don't know what's going to happen, right? Or maybe the new set of officers there to actually look at these things, because either way you look at it, it's going to happen. And I guess we are just in Q1. It's going to happen more or less like this year until early next year. Thank you, Fritz.
Thank you, Mel, on highlighting that, and I'm glad to hear that one of the government agencies, the National Privacy Commission, is aligning what's happening outside the Philippines. And a while ago, Jojo mentioned about the St. Luke's aligning their standards and policies with HIPAA, which is basically from the US. I'm one of the Filipinos being served by St. Luke's. I'm glad to hear that St. Luke's has robust information security policies. Jojo, on that note, apart from aligning your information security policies with HIPAA, any other initiatives or upcoming initiatives for St. Luke's in preparation for any upcoming regulations coming from their government?
Yeah. One of our flagship project is building our data and analytics in preparation for the AI. But there's a concerning for us is regarding the data sovereignty law, which I think is on the IRR stage. Because I think the Philippines, for that matter, is not ready yet to be a data localized, meaning all our data centers, including the redundancy, should be coming. It's not inter-region, because when you subscribe to a cloud service provider, you're guaranteed that you're redundant or cyber resilient in 3 regions or multiple regions. But when that data sovereignty will happen, law, it would appear that all would be, our data center or the cloud service provider would be emanating from the Philippines. Let's see, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. And we know for a fact that all of these are basically connected. So if you have a problem on Luzon, you have a problem on Mindanao. So those are a bit concerning for us. But I hope the coming the ICT. I'm one of those who incorporate the CICT before, so at least I have some knowledge on that. Level up also, meaning they need to they need the support of all this infrastructure vendor, third party for that matters. Although we're trying to hyperscale already our data centers, AWS, Azure, Google are here already, and they're trying to partner with all our telco and data center provider. But there's still a challenge on our infrastructure, and that's an open secret which everybody knows. And I'm not adding the cybersecurity. It's on that we'll go to the infrastructure, and we're a bit a problem already. So anyway, good luck to us, and hope we align what's happening on the inside also.
Thank you, Jojo. And this will be my last question. So what would be the one thing or one key takeaway that you'd like our audience here to think, to do after this discussion? Let's start with Marlon.
Well, I think regulators right now are heavy on emphasizing on resiliency. I think that's one of the pillars that we are currently adopting in BNM, because the one who drives our the regulators that drives Maybank in Malaysia is BNM. So whatever initiatives they have, we just push it down to all regions. So what I saw there, what I sense is that we are adopting different level of operational resiliency, not only on infrastructure but even people. We were surprised actually that some regulators now are looking for data centers and active DR and passive DR, which is totally a different technology stack. So imagine, you have an active DR site, production and DR, the same technology stack, and they are looking for another site which is passive with different technology stack. So the mindset there is because once your production DR is hit, definitely it could also replicate the attack, could be also applied the same on your DR site. So it's a single point of compromise. So what regulators is looking now is different technology stack that could prevent this production and DR attack happen on your third site. So it's totally 100% resilient kind of system, because whatever happens in your production, in your DR, it will no longer happen in your third site. So imagine how expensive investing in that. But that's something that maybe government and other regulators would explore, because that's the necessity right now. It's about resiliency. CISO always assume that we are always under attack, so anything can happen. So how can we recover? So yeah, so I mean, it's up to the CIO how can he strategize those. Yeah.
Thank you, Marlon. And I think, as emphasized by Marlon, it's very expensive. Hence, it's imperative for organizations to really explore the partner ecosystem, right? So we have the cloud, we have this shared data center. Thank you for highlighting that, Marlon. Mel?
So I think for me, it's still to adopt the zero trust mindset. But admittedly, not all organizations, vis-a-vis like their tech stack, can easily adapt that. Maybe the ones like, for example, those in the critical industry, because companies within the critical industry segment, like oil and gas, right, water, energy, so most of them, they still have legacy solutions or applications. And for those highly progressive ones, right, they have their own data centers, right, within their own facilities. Well, I guess for those companies who might not really like implement CT outright, they can look at potentially a multi-layered approach. But in the critical industry, you can still implement ZT, but not outright maybe in the portion or in the segment of your network where your legacy systems lies. But remember, the critical industry, they have adopted the IT and OT transformation starting pandemic years. So practically, when you get to plan that, you can already put in there like the principles where you would need to put in your detection tools, your verification, as well as your continuous monitoring. So that's one. And then I guess the second thing is, I know like for technology and cybersecurity leaders, we've been always like looking after protecting the data, and as well as your core infrastructure. But I guess you also need to extend that layer of protection to your employees, right? You need to think about personal protection as well. Yeah, those things.
Thank you, Mel, on highlighting the zero trust, which is the principle of never trust, always verify. And of course, Jojo.
Key takeaway. We're benefiting from exponential growth because of the cloud, but you mindset that cloud is powered by a powerful data center. So, because some of the people are saying already that they're looking at the end goal for data center. No, the end data center will stay here. It will be done hyperscale. So it's not for a digital transformation. I think it's not a prime that you always put everything into the cloud. Look at your processes. Look at like for the hospital, some of these things like our digital images or it's still not properly to be put in the cloud because it's very storage extensive. That will happen, and the infrastructure is not there. So look at the priorities, what to put in the cloud. Like maybe you start by doing your non-essentials or the back office. Then initially, and you have to check also the right proportion for doing it on a cloud and on premise. Like for us, we're looking at that 60-40, meaning 60% will be put in the cloud, 40% will still be left. And let's see what's the best scenario for it. But it's not proper to put everything into one basket. I think that's still the familiar cliche of all of this.
All right, with that, thank you. Thank you, our esteemed speakers. Thank you, everyone.